Welcome to the Gray Area Podcast. We want to educate, encourage, and empower students to get answers to all of life's gray areas. In this podcast, we discuss topics like relationships, leadership, mental health, and other gray areas, and give you factual insight so you have the knowledge and skills to thrive in whatever season of life you are in.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Gray Area Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Cameron Briggs, and I'm sitting here with three fantastic individuals here who work at Live Life. Starting with my right, we have...
I'm Ashley Albertson.
I'm Alfonso Robinson.
And I'm Devin Crockett.
Awesome. Today we're going to talk about the never controversial, never evolving, doesn't really change much, and everyone can agree on this topic. I would say leadership. Right, guys?
Wow.
Yeah.
Boldly going where no man
Really
has
honored to
gone
be a part of this
before.
breathtaking, life-shifting topic.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're basically the Mayflower of podcasts. Because, no one's ever done this before.
Never.
Wow. Yeah.
I love it.
I just repeated everything from my last intro because it wasn't recorded, so.
That's a talent.
Yeah,
Just making edits for yourself.
Yeah.
That's fun. Oh, okay. So one of the things that I really find interesting and one of the things I kind of think spurred this topic is a question I asked on my Instagram, which was, would you rather have a leader that's right all the time or a leader that can admit when they're wrong and is, honest. Yeah, or real. Always real or
humble,
always
honest.
right.
Yeah.
That was the question. And I actually really thought people were going to say it's always real. Like they can admit when they're wrong and they can, be vulnerable. But I actually had a couple people be like, absolutely not. I want a leader who's always right. And so I think that kind of spurred this idea and this concept. So I'd love to get y'all's thoughts. What would you prefer?
So when you say always right, just always making the right, never wrong.
Well, right, exactly. Is it they're literally always right or they think they're always right?
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and pick the always real leader, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel like if you have a leader that can keep it real with the situation, they also know when to follow, and that's an important thing about a leader. They know when to follow. So if you can admit that you're not always right and you can actually learn, it's just going to strengthen the overall objective of whatever this thing is. So
I would say, so I have the same opinion, but a little bit different perspective. Because again, you can always be right in the sense of facts, but you could always, that's not meaning that you're always being honest. Mm-hmm. Because again, you could always have the right answer. Or let's say, it's, I need someone to come work for me this weekend. And I know that Sarah always shows up if I call her first. So yes, that's knowing the right person to call, but maybe that's not the most real thing because Sarah's worked the past 8 Saturdays in a row and she needs a day off. And so, but again, well, the right thing is the right decision is, we'll call the person who's always dependable. But being a real boss is that, well, maybe I had to make a couple more calls, put myself out of the way. Because again, even though you're right, it doesn't mean you're always making the right decision.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
And to take it there, not to cut you off.
Sure.
Hate to be that person, but the only always right person is God. So
Yeah.
it's even saying that this leader is right, it's maybe from their lens, they're right, but not all knowing at all. So
Now, here's a hypothetical for that question.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, theoretically, they really are always correct.
Okay.
Factual correct. Not opinion correct, but factual correct. You ask them a question, they're going to give you the right answer. Does that change your opinion? Let's just go into the question of, if it was real, would that change your answer? Because honestly, I think I would rather have a boss who is, if they were actually always correct, factually correct, that would be difficult to choose against because I would just have to go and ask them a question and they'd give me the right answer and say, all right, cool.
There's a give and take in the literal aspect. Obviously, if it's just strictly literal, if you're doing a data analyst job or you're an accounting firm, of course, I always want my boss to be right because then, I know my job is safe because my boss is making sure that we're taking care of our accounts and the numbers are always right and the books are always taken care of. Yeah, that makes sense. But maybe in the sense of like, maybe you work with a group of counselors. Like, yeah, being right sometimes isn't the way to approach a situation. Sometimes people have to walk their way through a problem, or, there sometimes like there is success and fail because you're learning from that lesson. And sometimes bosses know, okay, well, the right thing to do is to maybe, like, again, in the book is, oh, we'll fire them because they made this mistake. Mm-hmm. But then having a real boss, the pivot is going to go, okay, well, this is the first time they made the mistake. It was a really big mistake, but how can we learn because this person's worth what we're putting into them. So again, I think your example is true. If it's straight on data, yes, I would always want my boss to be right. But I think if it involves people or anything that's like in a deeper level of what's the right word for it, life experience, I would definitely say I would rather have real.
Well, and I think also we're kind of like, we're thinking of like a one-dimension workplace, but like think about even like leaderships in your life. Like, I want my husband to be a combination. I want him to be right, and I also want him to be real, because if you think about how if you are a leader, because we're talking about leadership, and you are, let's say you are always right, you can always be right and not be real. And I think the realness is where growth happens, not only for a leader, but also for the people they are leading. And so I think the measure of a leader is how real they can be and how much people can grow underneath them. That's like good. If you're always right, then you're just giving an answer instead of helping your team to grow, helping your spouse to grow, helping the people in your community to grow. Like, how are you using your leadership? How are you using your rightness?
And I'm glad you actually said that, because I was going to say, just if somebody's always right, there's no room for growth, because there's no error. A real leader embraces error and learns from it. Even if you go from the most black and white examples from a data analysis standpoint, for 25 something years, this way has worked and has made us money. But if you don't pay attention to the trends that happen, you have 25 years of this one way working, but these new trends are happening. So this is becoming obsolete, and you're limiting yourself to grow and make more. So that's how I kind of look at it.
Yeah, that's good. I have a question for everyone here. If we're done with this topic, are you good?
Oh yeah.
So talking more about leadership, like real, honest, right. How would you define leadership? Like, if you could give me like one or two words to define leadership, what would you say?
Well, I would have to define what kind of leadership. Are you looking for your ideal leader, or you think just in general, what is a leader?
What is a leader?
Interesting.
So that's a different question to me. Because when I think, okay, give me the definition of leadership, I'm thinking, okay, a person over a group. But if you say, what is the definition of a leader, you can be a leader by yourself. Like, a couple words, I would say open to learn. More of a window personality than a door personality. And what I mean by that is we live in a world nowadays where being a leader means you have to be strong, and like you're on, again, I think a door. So you're on hinges. There are 3 things that pivot you, and you open and close doors for people. That's what your life, like that's how you consider your walk in life. You open it, you make the decisions, you open the door, you go through, you close doors on people. Like you're very firm, solid. Like you're a wall in your industry. I think what's exciting, especially with technology and the way that social media works and how trends are going, is being the new definition of a leader to me, and a good one, is a window. Is someone who, yes, they open and close, and again, but they can have different forms, different functions. But the biggest piece is that they're transparent. You can see through them. You can see through the other side. They're not trying to, guard their secrets. They're being transparent so other people can see what the bigger picture is on a topic or a solution or a situation. And that also gives people an opportunity when they look at them to go, okay, like I'm not just looking at a person who's a boss. I'm looking at someone who's giving me an opportunity to see the bigger picture of what I want to do and how I can function in that. So I would say, to me, modern day leader maybe versus an old leader, that's kind of the difference for me right now. It's random, but sorry.
I mean, just to build off of what you said, because I agree, but definitely somebody who understands different perspectives, and and the key word patient. Because
leaders are patient. What?
Those two things go hand in hand, because you're gonna, believe it or not, people just don't think like you. So the simplest thing that you might, this is clearly how this works. Most people just don't see it like that. And you're gonna have to be open to understand that, okay, they're looking at it from this lens. How can this lens affect the way that I'm looking at it? And then combine those perspectives and make something move from there. And being able to make that decision. Because yes, you can compromise, but not all the times both parties can have, exactly what they want. So definitely somebody who has patience and can understand different perspectives.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think a definition I would have for a leader is someone who sees the weight of a responsibility and picks it up for a group of people, and not only picks up that responsibility or carries it, but also allows other people in their sphere of influence to come alongside of them and help them grow to take that responsibility so they can move elsewhere, like growing the people within your sphere. And like, I don't know, I feel like a real leader understands it's not about like being in front and being on top and being the one that's like, oppressive, but the one who's underneath and behind the scenes and is lifting people up. I think that is really a true leader, someone that's focused on others rather than self.
Yeah. Going off of that, I think that one of the most important parts of leadership, like, thinking about this, one word comes to mind, it's ownership. It's like taking ownership of what you're doing, taking ownership of the people you are leading and your job. Because, we have this thing at Live Life, it's called a Rossi, like responsible, accountable, all that stuff. If someone messes up here, it falls back on who's accountable. And usually the accountable person is the big like leader, the boss of it all. And yeah, like something could go wrong here, but at the end of the day, like if you're not cultivating and developing that and watching over it and being there, then you're not being a good leader. You're not taking ownership of what's around you and what God has given you. So that's what I think about.
That's good.
I like that.
That's really good.
Yeah. I had another question in my head, but I completely just let it go.
Well, are you okay if I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Awesome. I would ask, so what are some examples of really, really good leaders and really, really bad leaders? Don't say names or anything, but like what are the traits? What are the traits that you have seen that that you think are really great and then really not great?
So I've had lots of jobs. I never went to college. I worked and have had several different colorful bosses. I'm gonna say one of the worst traits that I see in a bad boss is gonna be someone who thinks that their presence equals functionality. Like, oh, well, I'm here, so things should function. But I think what's frustrating is it's like actually things function because people are working. And that I think that really frustrated me. Like with some of my jobs, it's like, okay, well, I've been here for X amount of time, and maybe like in one place I never got a raise. And I'm like, well, like, oh, well, you've had this problem, that problem whenever I'm here. But also when you're not here, it functioned. Like everything was working and like we were making money, or the process of what we were trying to accomplish was happening. That is really frustrating because I think there is this level of ownership that people don't take when they get to that level. It's like, okay, well, I've made it. Like I started my business. I I'm the boss of this thing, and now like I get to do the parts and pieces that I enjoy, and I delegate all the things that I don't. And I'm like, no, your presence does not equal functionality. Like like for a bad boss. Now again, I will say there are bosses, like I would say, you know, in some of the good jobs that I've had, when they show up, like blessed, super excited, because like they have questions, or like they have the answers to the questions that I have, or like they can help me figure a solution out, or but I guess on my good side, or my good trait, I would just say open to questions. A lot of leaders nowadays, like, they just get frustrated with questions, and it's like, well, you should know, figure it out. Well, I mean, if you want me to do it the way that you want me to do it, you have to be able to explain how you do it. And I think being able to teach is really important. Like, just as much as being a leader. And some people don't have it, and that's okay, but just even be able to, like, type it out, write it out, communicate it well. If you know someone who taught you, who could teach the next person, like, delegating someone to teach. Because again, if you can't communicate well what their responsibilities are, people can't succeed. And then you have people constantly cycling because you don't know how to communicate what needs to be done.
Yeah, to go a little off what you're saying, but even to, like, counteract what you just said as well. What's the line between, like, hey, what I'm doing works whether you're here or not, and that's okay, and then the other side of the line of undermining your boss and stepping on toes and saying, well, what I'm doing is right and what you're doing is wrong, so I'm just going to keep doing it my way even though you're the boss, the leader?
Well, again, that depends on leadership. I mean, it depends on how they're going to be able to delegate those things and trust you. Because again, I've even volunteered at places where the creative team was way up here. They were incredible, but the leadership refused to give them creative control because the function of it was going so well, the way that it was being curated. But if they would have released that control, then that team of people, of creatives, could have really stepped into what needed to be done. So again, it's like, what ended up happening, a lot of people ended up leaving that opportunity. And that, I mean, that just goes to show, it's like, yes, there's a very fine line, but I would say this, like, do you think the risk is worth the outcome? Because sometimes it's like, I mean, especially here, like with Live the Life, there are tons of projects that you can work on any time. And yes, everyone's hired for specific jobs and this and that, but like right now, like we're doing like a bingo thing. It's not really my job, but I really want it to happen because I'm really excited and I really care about it. So yeah, like me doing that puts a risk on my other responsibilities. So it's like, okay, well, like, can I do all of it? And so I have to juggle that responsibility. But again, but that's the good thing about here. No one's stopping me. So that's good leadership. They're like, they trust me to step in, and if I need to back off, I can. So
yeah,
if that answers it.
Kinda, but you know, with that example you just gave, how are you making sure that what you're doing is productive and not undermining and stepping on toes?
I mean, at the end of the day, you submit to leadership. A good leader will learn to submit to their leadership. Always, always, always. Because it's like, well, yeah, like at the end of the day, things are gonna mess up, and if it's a leader, if it's your leader's fault, then yeah, I did all that I could to help in the way that I could. And good leaders also submit. Yeah.
Okay. I respect that.
I think one of the I worked for some pretty special bosses. And I would say, honestly, unrealistic expectation with no clear communication.
Wow. Come on.
That's like probably my biggest thing, because I remember I've worked in politics, I've worked in graphic design, I've worked in lots of different areas.
A sheep herder.
I've been a sheep herder. But no, I haven't. I'm waiting for my opportunity, though. No. So
when God calls, I run.
I'm waiting for my David moment. So anywho, but I would say I worked for someone that just honestly had the most eclectic desires. I was their personal assistant, and they just had really unrealistic expectations. And like, if you know me, like I really try to go above and beyond. I try to read minds. I try to be there at any hour that they want to be there before them, stay after them, stay on top of things, and nothing I did was enough. And so, and they ended up like wanting to fire me because they were like, oh, she just doesn't get it. And I'm like, how could I possibly get it? You tell me to do something different every single day, and nothing I do is good enough, but you don't tell me how to be better. So that was honestly like soul crushing. It was both exciting and soul crushing because I was doing something different every day. But I think just at the end of the day, realizing that that person never understood what they wanted. And then that became my problem. And I was the one that was responsible, even though I couldn't do anything about it. And so I had to learn from that experience that, like, I need to have clear communication, clear lines of what I'm expected to do. Because if not, that's just setting me up to fail. And I don't ever want to do that to anyone else. So as a leader, I really don't. I want to be clear and I want to be reasonable. So...
That's good.
That's really good.
Y'all really took the 2 examples. You took mine and actually said the next one. Truthfully. I feel like a boss that doesn't, I'm trying to think how to say it correctly, because the boss isn't supposed to know, like the big boss isn't supposed to know the day-to-day, everyday functions. But when you go, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, but when the bosses were requesting things that they kind of don't know about and creating that unrealistic expectations, but think that they know more about it, then you're hired here for this reason. I think that's the biggest thing.
Well, all of us are creatives, right? So, like, in some form or fashion, you're making this podcast. All of us are creatives. Like, I was a florist for 6 years. Like, y'all have done graphic design, videos. Yeah, crazy, right? So, I mean, all of us know, we've all had those moments when our boss are like, hey, can you do this? And it's, like, actually impossible for you to do.
Literally.
No, I've never made a flower wall 1 flower at a time before in 4 hours. I'm sorry. This isn't a game show. I'm not winning.
But yeah, just not knowing the actual process and then acting like you do know. It's being humble. The lack of being humble, because there's some things you're not going to know. That's why you hired these people.
Yeah.
So just that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really good. I think, going with your question, like some really, really good examples. Like I said earlier, like ownership. Someone who could take ownership of their company, taking ownership of their department, saying, if one person's not doing well, I'm not doing well as a leader.
Yeah.
Like, how can I step up to make this better? I think what you were saying was really good. Like being able to listen and not thinking that, like, as a leader, it's my way or the highway. People are allowed to come in and understand. Like the same way everyone's always like, to be a good like worker, be coachable, be teachable. The same goes for leaders.
Yeah.
Be teachable, be coachable. I heard all the time as an athlete, as a soccer player, you have to go into somewhere and be coachable because that's what coaches want. Coaches want someone who's going to mold around their play style, which is something that's really important even in the workspace. I'm sure you heard that all the time. Like being a baseball player is like be coachable, be teachable. So I think that's really, really important as well. Just like understanding it, like you're not always right. I mean, it goes into our first question. Like being always right is not possible. It's not. It doesn't matter who you are, except if you're not Jesus, you are not always right. So understanding that I will never always be right, and understanding that, some people are allowed to walk in here and have good ideas.
Yeah.
It's not my way or the highway. Yeah.
Now, I will like I guess you could say devil's advocate, but as a leader, where does the line get drawn for... Because, it's not my way or the highway, but to a certain extent, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
This is the way we are going. I understand it's a great idea, and it's providing results, but this is the direction we're going, and it's taking us away from the main agenda.
And I think that's something that a leader has to have in the moment to be like, hey, love what you're trying to do, love what you're trying to say right now. This is where we're moving right now. We're going to keep doing this. I would love to try this later on. And also, it's not listening to every single idea that comes in as well. Like, being a good leader is having that discernment of knowing when is someone talking out their butt and when is someone actually, like, producing fruit. It's not every day you're going to have, like, let's say someone just walks in, like, you just hired them, and a week later they're like, well, what if we did things like this, and did things like this, and did things like this, and did things like this? And it's just like, buddy, slow down.
That's literally me first week.
Yes, I know.
That is true, yeah.
But it's like, buddy, slow your roll. Like, you haven't been here a week. Like, learn how we're doing things around here. And then, like, in a couple months, let's have a meeting. Yeah. And let's sit down and talk about things one-on-one. Because one is, well, like, Richard always preaches about it, is, praise in public, call out in private. Like, if you have something against, the way I'm running things, let's you and I sit down. Or even if a leader is like, hey, like, you're not doing what you need to be doing right now, don't do that in a staff meeting. Say, hey, let's have a meeting, talk one-on-one, maybe have someone there as an accountability thing of, like, you're keeping track of what this person's saying, a non-biased party of, like, what is this meeting about? But having the discernment to understand of, like, when something is actually good and when something is just talking out their butt right now. I think that's really important.
There's a really good book called Radical Candor, and they talk a lot about, and again, obviously size of your team matters, but they talk about chain of command communication is really important, because what happens sometimes in leadership is you go from a staff of 5 people to a staff of 10 people to a staff of 50 people. There's a lot that, like, you can't have a one-on-one relationship. So what you end up doing is you create leaders. And again, a big part of it too, I think that we haven't talked about, is leaders who can create connections with their coworkers. Because, I can tell you all the truth in the world, but again, if I don't know or care about you, then I can't just say it as bluntly as I want to do it. And so what they do is, so like the top leader meets with their 3 people, and then those 3 people are in charge of 4 people, and then, so on and so forth. It delegates down, and so again, the big boss only has to have one meeting with the 3 big, and they're saying, okay, well, Kelly did this, and Sean did that, and da-da-da-da-da, and then they can say, cool, well, that's a great idea that Sean had, let's pull him into a meeting and try to make that happen. And then your leaders are just always pulling people up as they go up the chain, like, oh, this person did this, and they pull them up, and they make those things happen. So that way, like, your company or your business can spread, but also you're building relationships where people feel open to communicate when things are good and when things are bad. My favorite example in the book is the lady's giving a presentation. Fast forward, she's done. Her boss is like, you did a really wonderful job. All your notes were clear. And you said a lot. You should stop doing that. And she's like, oh, okay. Like, I'll, like, thinking she was just like, that was a small thing. And the boss was like, no, like, you said like way too much. And she's like, okay, like, I get it. And the boss said, no, you literally sound stupid every time you say
Sheesh.
Because she didn't realize, but again, she had that relationship with her where she was trying to be soft in the beginning and kind of pull her to the truth. But because the lady wasn't receiving it, she had to, like, because they had relational like credit, she'd go, hey, listen, you're not hearing me. You sound dumb when you say so much. And she said since then, like, every time she runs it back and she makes sure she keeps it out of it. And those are great moments where, again, you get to be real but also be right.
Yeah, understanding the seriousness of this, like, listen, like, and that's completely true. There are things that, like, you and I talk about, Ashley and I talk about, and even nowadays, like, Alfonso and I talk about, where it's like, sometimes I'm not getting something, and it's just like, that needs to be pulled out of, like, hey, getting real. This is what's happening. This needs to be fixed. And it's like, okay, I understand now. And it's just something as simple as that. I completely agree.
I think, just gonna piggyback off of what something you said, talking about how do you, like, when Devin was first beginning, had all these ideas. I think the one concept that I think is a really important in a workplace is, are you training up the people under you for leadership? So, like, for Alfonso, you know, like he's under me, he's on my creative team. Like, of course, when he was first starting, there were things like, no, Alfonso, I want it done like this. No, and I held his hand a lot more. And now he's like, oh, Ashley, I want to do this. I want to do this. And because he's, you know, been with me for 2 years and I trust him, I don't even like look at, this is probably not good to but I don't even look at the stuff that he creates or like social media or other things like that. I'm just like, I know Alfonso's got it. I know Alfonso can do this because he's proven himself. And like, I'm not gonna lie, like as a leader, my biggest hurdles were delegation, and I still am struggling with that one, and then also clear communication. So like, but you have to, as a leader, have people on your team that you trust to delegate. And so I think that that's like the biggest thing. How are you developing trust in your team so that you are growing them and handing them things so that you're not a micromanager, and that you have that clear communication? Because like, even if Alfonso is still doing amazing, like I still need to be able to communicate with him and tell him things, and like, am I doing a good job of growing you, getting you to where you need to be? Or am I just like on the sideline, just like, oh yeah, whatever you want? Like, I think I also get into that mode as well because I am so driven on my own. I know Alfonso's so driven, but are we on the same page? Am I helping him grow? Am I bringing him up to that next level so that we can take everything to the next level? So I think that's one of the biggest things that I've had to learn, and I'm still learning. I'm definitely not like, here I am at the top. No, I'm definitely still learning all of that.
Yeah, I was even going to go into that as well, thinking being able to delegate makes you a good leader. Like, that's a super big quality, because how is your team going to grow if you don't give them a chance to fail?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Like, I read something earlier, it's like, how many times you fail and fall, like, what matters is the next time, like, just getting up and saying, I'm going to do it again then.
Right.
And being able to take, you know, you can get his little slap on the wrist and not kill yourself about it and not be like, I am the epitome of failure.
Right.
Like, being able to take that and say, all right, how can I grow from this? That needs to be your first thought when something happens, and it's like, oh, the camera, this isn't what I was thinking. They're not telling you you're terrible at your job, and you got one more chance or you're fired. Hopefully they would tell you.
Nobody's in that.
Hopefully, if that happened, they wouldn't undermine it and be like, oh, Cameron, you'll get next time, and then you don't get it next time. They're like, well, you're fired.
Right.
They would hopefully they would tell you, like, hey,
Walk
you need to get
along
your
with
crap
you.
straight. Like, if you're not getting this straight, something bad's gonna happen. It needs to happen. Hopefully your leadership and your work is having conversations like that with you.
Like a good surprise.
Keep me on my toes.
Keep my toes.
Really helps my discernment. Well, I can read a
Always on
situation.
edge at work. It's like so fun.
But like I was saying, I think delegation is so important to be able to allow your team to grow.
Well, it's a give and take. I think you have to be really careful as a leader to delegate, because then you really get onto the field of like dictatorship, where you're constantly, again, like I said earlier, where if you're not you think your presence is valuable over working. It's like, because I've definitely had plenty of leaders who they delegate their life away and they sat in a chair and did nothing, and I'm like,
yeah,
wish I could do that.
That's a very important. Again, like saying it. What's the line between delegation and laziness? And
Ooh, that's a great question.
And saying like, oh, here's this and this and this, but I'm also gonna be working on this because this is super important. Or what's the difference between like, you take half my work, you take half my work, I'm gonna go to lunch.
I swear to you, I've had that happen.
That's a very
but
fine
then what
line.
is your opinion of that leader?
Terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the worst leaders to me, because it's like, well, then why am I not in charge of this? If I'm doing half the work, someone else is doing a third, and the delegation again seems small because you're just giving chunks and pieces, but then when you look at it, it's like, oh, well, all that I'm doing is in my day. Your day could be done in an hour, and you're just there to like. I think that's where you get dangerous in the place of micromanaging, is when you over delegate, it leads to micromanaging, because then you're losing responsibility, and now everyone is taking a chunk of your job, and then you have to go, and that's how, again, another way that you lose staff is a lot of people are trying to do your work, And now, as a leader, you have to go because you're accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're looking at everyone like, oh, well, if you do your job wrong, then like I'm gonna get in trouble at the end of the day. And then you make everyone. And then that's emotional manipulating your coworkers.
And I've been in job situations to where, because just another flip side of delegating, you can delegate the task, but also as a leader know how to delegate effectively. Because I've had workplaces where, all right, proper delegation, boss still got all of his tasks, but this person is clearly you can't just keep giving that person tasks. So just saying, oh, this, and then expecting them to be, oh, well, if they've shown that they can't do it at the speed that you're requiring, and you're not stepping in to either help them step up in speed and just putting it all, that's terrible team management. I feel like you're the worst boss ever if you're clearly seeing somebody struggle and just take it.
Would you consider firing someone then?
Firing to a certain extent. The leader has to step in.
Yeah.
If the leader's like, okay, your production level isn't reaching, let's work out a plan. How can we reach that? So then take those steps forward. If it's not looking, one more, all right. So we tried this, feedback from it, and then after that, that's where that line comes, okay, well, we're going to have to find another direction. Because, as long as the leader is doing their part and actually leading and being helpful, it's really not much you can do at that point. But a lot of people don't do that. Like, a leader would just be like, okay, do this. Oh, well, Johnny's not doing it. Johnny got to go. And it's just like, but Johnny thinks he's doing the best he can. I'm looking at Johnny doing the work. It's like, you can't really, you got to make that clear. And I feel like a lot of bosses don't do that.
I think Google
especially in
functions
retail.
that way, right?
Oh my God.
I think Google functions that way. Like, you go in, they're always giving you evaluations, and their goal is to like be moving you up or moving you out.
Interesting.
I feel that's how a lot of big businesses are nowadays.
Well,
that makes sense though.
Well,
That's
it's like, hey, like, we want you to be, this art, say like you're a graphic designer. Okay, cool. Like, you're doing a great job. Let's move you up to assistant. Move you up to manager. Okay, well, you've hit this manager spot. Like, do you, you don't have the skill set to be an executive, and we don't want you to be trapped here because there's tons of more projects. And then they go, okay, here's the massive amount of opportunity, because that means Google. And I'm pretty sure that's how they do. And then they go, okay, like, let's try to put you in that place so you can have your perfect fit. Because again, they're raising people up, and then if again you can't go any higher, and it's not where you want to be long term, push them out.
Yeah,
and that's a really good system.
Yeah, it is.
They need
I
that
think
in
coming
retail.
honestly,
Everyone should do that.
Because that's the experience. So worked at a shoe store, and it was like, this person they're not a seller. Like, it's okay, great person, amazing, but you just can't sell and hit the numbers. Try to help out. If you don't, well,
it's very Lilo and Stitch, what you just talked about, like finding a perfect fit. Because if you ever watched Lilo and Stitch, that's what it was about, finding that perfect fit.
I love it.
I was gonna say Jesus, maybe.
Lilo and Stitch points to the gospel.
Oh wow, this.
And there's your video tag. Leadership plus Lilo and Stitch equals Jesus.
Equals Jesus Christ. I think a lot of times when it comes to delegation as well, I think leaders are afraid of being replaced. And they're afraid that, like, if I give them this and my boss sees that, wow, they're so good at it, there's a chance they could say, Buddy got to go because Johnny's doing it.
When has that ever happened? I've heard that all the time. I've never seen that happen.
Neither have I.
I've never
seen
someone go, you know what? That person's killing it so much, you're fired. I've never seen it. I've only seen it in movies.
That's crazy.
But it's such like a mental insecurity from
it's like
people.
A movie thing.
Because it's like, oh my gosh, I could be replaced. When it comes down to it, a good leader is in a way replaceable, not because of their personal skill sets, but because of the work that they do. Like, if you're not training up people below you that can take the weight, and let's say something happens, you want to be replaceable in a way.
You want somebody to be able to step in and keep it
exactly
going.
Let's say you get like sick, or surgery happens, or you have a baby and you're gone for a month
or a career change.
or a career change. Is this whole thing gonna go under because you're no longer in this position?
I will say this: sometimes being real will save your job over being right, because I've had a boss, and again, she had a general manager, amazing, but probably 30, 40 people in and out the door. And
like turnover.
And the owner said, I trust her. I don't care if she's more wrong. I trust her over all those people. And I was like, whoa. That I mean job security, like whenever you have such a deep relationship with someone. But then too, on the far side, I always thought, but where would the business have been if you would have kept 15, 20 of those people, raised them up? Like, how big would your business have been if you could have, if it was just that one person? Was she just that good of a boss to where like people couldn't handle the pressure of the work environment? Or was it, well, maybe she was a bad leader, but she just, she had an untouchable position. And that's why I feel like I've never seen someone who is genuinely a bad leader ever get bumped out, unless it was like a massive, like humongous corporate level. I've never seen that happen on like where I've worked.
Yeah, and kind of along those lines, something that I've recently heard, which I really like, is people don't quit businesses or jobs, they quit managers. And so, like, if you have a high turnover rate, like, maybe don't think about it like, oh, this is just people don't like the job. Like, maybe think about your leadership style. Like, what's going on inside of your sphere of influence that people cannot work under it.
Yeah. Eventually, you gotta look in the mirror and say, am I the drama? Like,
am I the villain?
It's as simple as that. And going off what you were saying, Devin, I think people are too focused on trying to find the right person instead of raising the right person.
That's good. I mean,
like, you want this perfect candidate to walk through the door, but you're not willing to sit down with someone who's like, wow, you have this potential. In 6 months, I want to raise you to be this. In a year, I want to raise you to be this. I want you to be able to take over what I'm doing so I can move up or I can move out. And I think that's really important as well.
Favorite work story about leadership. I had a girl, very, I would say, mousy, very quiet, very chill. And so again, I was a florist, and so if she sees this, I love you. But we were talking, and I remember my boss above me was, hey, she's working slow. But again, everything she made, beautiful, but she only made like 2 arrangements in an hour, which is pretty slow. So I remember I was just pushing her, and then a year goes by, and I had left that job and went back, and she says, I want you to know, I thought you were so mean when I started working here because you were so pushy. But now we've had new people come, and I find myself trying to find the strength to push people the way that you pushed me, because now I needed that push so badly. And to be so, like, again, it sucked when you were saying it because I felt bad. Yeah. But the turnaround, she goes, well, now that I'm bearing more weight and you pushed me, and now that they trust me, I see where other people need to be and how I was doing that thing. And now, like, because of you, yes, I don't have that natural skill set, but I know because you did it the right way, how to push people to go faster. And yeah, it sounds kind of blunt and kind of mean, but hey, you got to work faster. I'm sorry. You got to do another one. Like 15 minutes. Put yourself a timer. Do it this way, and then that just like really made my heart happy, because like
it's hard in the moment.
It's so hard. Yeah. I'm like, because she's so sweet and so nice, and I was scared that I was gonna word crush her, but
that's how you know someone cares about you.
Yeah.
Is when they're truly pushing you to be the best person you can be, not letting you be stuck in this where you are right now and not giving you the chance to grow. That's how you know people will care about you and care about the job that you have, and even care about their business. That's how you know people have a heart.
Thank you for listening today. We hope you feel educated, encouraged, and empowered to thrive in every area of your life.